Welcome on into a very special edition of CBS Sports HQ Spotlight. I'm Chris Hassel, getting set to kick off Week 1 in the NFL. The next 2 hours here on CBS Sports Network filled with picks against the spread for every game and Pete Prisco's brand new power rankings. The defending champion Philadelphia Eagles starting out on top, followed by the Bills and Chiefs. Look at the Packers, up to number 4. After trading for Micah Parsons, we're going to hit more than half of these teams over the next 30, 45 minutes or so before we flip over to picks against the spread. Doing things a little bit differently this season, Pete Prisco has tiered his rankings. Ooh. Eagles in the undisputed number 1 tier, and then teams chasing a championship like the Bills, Ravens, Commanders, and then that next tier down to 15 or so teams that should be making the postseason, according to Pete. We have Pete Prisco with us. We also have Leger Douzable. We specifically requested Leger
they did.
Because the producers believe that he pushes back against you more than anybody else. What do you think?
Is that true, Pete?
He tries pushing back. He never wins, though.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
Allegedly. In your article at CBSSports.com, where you list your power rankings, you say that oftentimes you're kind of humiliated by these Week 1 power rankings. So I went back and looked at last year, and there were a couple. There's a whole Reddit thread from Commanders fans. You had them ranked 31st going into the season last year, and as we know, they played the Eagles in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, and I do that at the end of every year. I go back and I revisit the first batch of them, and I look back and I go, boy, we really don't know how this league is going to go. And it's not just me, it's everybody. I mean, we predicted this league is crazy year to year, except with a few exceptions.
You had the Eagles 10th, by the way, but this year starting number 1 and on that undisputed tier all on their own. Why are they an undisputed number 1 to you?
Well, because you earn the right to start at number 1. It doesn't necessarily mean, as I wrote,
but you said it's undisputed.
But, well, they're not undisputed.
What? That's the tier they're on.
I didn't put them on that tier.
What are you talking about?
My tier, they wouldn't be undisputed. I don't think there is undisputed in this league. You can't put anybody undisputed. And the reason is, I don't even have them winning the Super Bowl. But you start at number 1 because you've earned the right to be number 1. By winning last year. I always start that team at number 1, unless they have a catastrophic injury, which the Eagles have not.
Leger, this is a really slow start to Pete.
No, I didn't put them at number 1.
I would say I agree they should be number 1. When you look at it, only replace one starter on offense. I don't know if there's another team in the NFL that can say that, and it was the guard position, and you feel comfortable because Jeff Stoutland, the O-line coach, he's one of the best, if not the best O-line coach in football. To me, the only question marks to this team are, one, the play caller, Kevin Patula, because he's never done it before, but when you have that type of O-line and Saquon Barkley and those 2 weapons on the outside, Jalen Hurts just has to turn around and hand the football off. But the defense, now, I love Vic Fangio, but at all 3 levels and Pete, there's been significant change, right? When you look at the defensive line, Josh Sweat's no longer there, Milton Williams, the younger guys are going to step up. At the linebacker position, Kobe Dean's still hurt. Who's going to be that second guy next to Zach Bond? At the safety position, Sidney Brown goes into the starting rotation, and so does Adoree Jackson. So when you look at it, that's my question mark with the Philadelphia Eagles. They don't have many questions, none on offense besides the play caller, and then on defense, can some of those younger players step up that they need to step up because some of the veterans have left in free agency?
And those guys were depth guys. I think they get hurt depth-wise, too.
For sure. The depth is not
as
strong
that they usually have. The other thing is everybody's gunning for them. And when you're the team that's they're gunning for, you're going to get their best every single week. How do you handle that? That's tough to do. We don't see a lot of by the way, we haven't seen repeating in that division since 2004.
For sure.
Let alone winning the whole thing. They haven't repeated in that division to win it since 2004. So it's going to be tough to do.
Yeah, the last team to do that was the Eagles under Andy Reid when they were led by Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens when they made the Super Bowl back in that 04 season. So let's go to the chasing a championship tier. Are you going to tell us that you had nothing to do with that as well, Pete?
No. These teams are all legitimately chasing a championship.
Okay, well, a lot of these teams are legitimately chasing their first championship of this era. The Chiefs, let's set them aside. They're different. You know, they had almost 3 straight Super Bowl championships. The Eagles stopped that. But let's start at number 2 with the top-ranked AFC team, the Buffalo Bills. Why are Bills fans to believe that this will finally be the year they break through the AFC?
Well, it starts with the regular season because they're going to have the best record in the league. by the time it's all said and done. I think the division is winnable, easily winnable. I think the schedule is favorable. They don't go further west than the Texans for a road game. I mean, that matters. They also have most of their tough opponents at home. They play the Chiefs at home. They play the Ravens at home. They play the Bucks at home. I mean, they have most of their tough games at home. So I think they win 13 games, which means they get the number 1 seed. And if you get the number 1 seed, you need to win 2 games and you're in. So I think that's the perfect path for them. Plus, I think they're a better team than they were a year ago.
This is where we have our first issue. I think this team is entirely too high. Now, I love Josh Allen and what he did. Obviously was the MVP last year. But, Pete, the same things that ailed him last year are still glaring issues. Who's playing corner opposite of Christian Benford right now?
Well, when Hairston gets back, he will.
When? You're saying when. We don't know when he's getting it back.
Might that be?
Exactly. So we don't know. They had a major issue opposite of him, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. Pass rush, where is it coming from? I know you say Joey Bosa, but when you look at the history, he's playing on that hard turf. He was playing in California. I played in California. That soft grass helps you when you have lower body ailments. He's had lower body ailments. Now he's playing on that hard turf. And they got hit with depth issues at the defensive tackle position this last week with Dwayne Carter going down.
He was going to be the 5th defensive tackle.
But the depth is hurt there. Also, opposite of Bosa, who do you trust to consistently get to the quarterback? I mean, he has never been a double-digit sack guy, though.
But he's never really had that other guy on the other side.
But that's what I'm saying. There's so many question marks when it comes.
Questions, but there are questions for everything. But here's the thing about the defensive line. They're going to come in waves. Now
they said that last year, though.
Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi are suspended for 6 games. Yeah. So when they come back, they're going to have a deep, talented rotation. I think the 2 rookies are going to be a factor. I think Walker and Sanders are going to be factors inside as well. That's why Dwayne Carter was the 5th defensive tackle.
But that's my issue. They are banking on so much youth right now to propel them early on in the season. And to our point, Pete, it's not the division. Everybody assumes they're going to win the AFC East. But for me, for them to be Super Bowl contenders, they need to have the number 1 seed. Because they had it a few years ago, and Patrick Mahomes kicked down their door and won it there. Last year, they were in the AFC Championship game. They couldn't get over the hump versus Patrick Mahomes. To me, they have one of the better home field advantages. They need to get the number 1 seed. And if they start the season off slow, there's a chance they won't get the number 1 seed.
But they're not going to start the season off slow. The schedule.
Them first 2 games are going to be real interesting versus the Ravens and Jets.
Oh, there it was. We got to the root of it. The Jets.
We know the history of Josh Allen at MetLife. We know the history of Josh Allen at MetLife. That's all I'm going to say.
That might be the only mention of the Jets on the power rankings part of the show today. You mentioned they play the Ravens on Sunday Night Football.
We'll learn real quick.
More on Baltimore in just a second, but let's go to the next couple of teams. Mention the Chiefs at 3. Let's go to the Packers at 4, Pete. Where would they be, I guess, if they didn't trade for Micah Parsons?
Oh, they were my Super Bowl team anyway.
They would have been here no matter what.
Oh, I picked them a couple weeks
ago. You did.
I did.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I was here when
How much better can they be now with Parsons?
Big time difference. I remember sitting and talking to Matt LaFleur about his team, and the one thing he was lamenting is we don't rush the passer well enough. Well, now they will. And not only does he go in there and provide the pass rush, but he's going to make Gary better on the other side. It balances the defensive line. They can move him around. I think they could have packages where Van Ness, Gary, and Micah Parsons are all on the field at the same time. So I think from a pass rush standpoint, it elevates them to a really high. Now, they averaged 2.3 sacks per game last year. It wasn't like they didn't get to the quarterback.
Correct.
But they're going to be that much better with him on the field.
I still think they're too high, right? And I say this because we had this conversation last year, Pete. What is going to be their identity? Because going into last season, you pay a quarterback $55 million. He needs to be the identity of your team.
He was hurt.
But he wasn't. It was the running back. He was the identity of their team.
Well, because Jordan Love was hurt.
I get that, but everybody's hurt in the NFL. We say the same thing about Trevor Lawrence. Like, how many excuses are we going to make for these quarterbacks? He was hurt. Everybody's hurt. Nobody is healthy after, like, week 2 of the NFL season.
Then he was injured. How about that?
Well, this is the year, right? Because they added Matthew Golden. We don't know if Romeo Doubs is going to be there, but he has had issues staying healthy, right? They have a potent run game. They put a lot of money into that offensive line. You talked about it. They brought in Micah Parsons because that was a glaring issue in regards to consistently getting to the quarterback. Lucas Van Ness was a guy they took in the first round, and he really hasn't played up to that billing yet. So to Pete's point, maybe they rotate him in, maybe they even kick him inside on some third downs as well. My other issue is I love Nate Hobbs, right? I think Keshawn Nixon should be a starting slot corner, not outside guy. Javon Bullard was a guy that they started the slot who's more of a safety. And I know they like Valentine, but I think the depth at corner is an issue as well. Now, Micah Parsons can help in that issue because guys won't have to cover as long as if he's able to get to the quarterback. I just don't think they have the depth at corner and the horses all the way up front to make a Super Bowl run. And then Jordan Love is my biggest question mark when it comes to this.
See, I think the corners are good enough. They're not great. They're good enough, and they need to be better. They'll be the first one to admit it. But I think Jordan Love is in for a huge year. I really do. One of the things, he got hurt in week 1. Then he suffered the groin injury later in the season. He couldn't practice that much. They think he gets into bad habits when he doesn't practice. He needs to be on the field. I think if he's on the field healthy, I think they're going to put up just monster passing numbers this year.
So who's going to be his number one target on the outside?
It doesn't matter. You don't need a number one target. You just need a bunch of them. And he's got a bunch. Matthew Golden might be the number one.
I like Matthew Golden a lot, but that's a lot for you to expect a rookie to come in day one and be the guy.
The days I was there watching their practice, he didn't drop one ball. He's phenomenal. I think Christian
He can blow the top off the defense.
By the way, Christian Watson is running. He was running 3 weeks ago when I was there. He's going to be back sooner rather than later. And they need him because he gets speed. And by the way, both tight ends are healthy. They're going to be healthy. That's important.
All right, Packers open up on Sunday. CBS against the Lions. NFL Today and the NFL Today Plus will be there. At number 5 in Pete Prisco's Week 1 power rankings, the Baltimore Ravens. And in the article, it appears like you make the argument, or at least come close to making the argument, that they might be the most talented team in the NFL. Are they?
They might be. I mean, from a position-by-position standpoint, they might be. And they have 2 stars in their backfield. I mean, you have the running back in Derrick Henry, and you have the quarterback in Lamar Jackson. They're phenomenal. They have concerns. There are issues. Do they have you talk about the Bills pass rush. Do they have a guy you come to the line of scrimmage and you have to identify and say, let's block him? They don't have that yet. It might be Mike Green. He's a rookie. They like him.
Watch out for Mike Green this year.
But we'll see. He's a rookie, though.
Yeah.
We'll see. And I do think that defensively they're going to be better in the back end because they add Alexander. If he can stay on the field, that's big for them. Nate Wiggins will probably take a step forward. Look, a lot of guys last year didn't play well early in the season, Matabiki being one of them, Roquan Smith being another. If those guys get back to where they were, they're going to be really good on defense, but they still don't have point them out, block them guy at the line of scrimmage.
Well, it's funny because people always talk about their lack of pass rush. Do you know where the Ravens finished in sacks last year?
In what?
In sacks last year?
Yeah. Well, who? Where? Sorry.
Number 2 in the league, behind only the best defense in football, the Denver Broncos. So it's funny to me that people always say they don't have a guy that you can point out.
They manufacture it.
But my thing is, both of their edge guys had 10 sacks, Pete. Right? Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owa both had 10 sacks. Matabike is a former pro.
Do you identify those guys?
Identify them getting 10 sacks. Identify that. That's all I'm going to say.
Some guys that get sacks because they're
but I think also Nnamdi Madubuike in the middle. You talked about him not playing really that well in the beginning. We just saw the graphic weeks 11 through 18. I think him and Roquan definitely took a step in that defense with Zach Orr as the defensive coordinator, because sometimes it takes a while when you have a new defensive coordinator and to find your role on that defense. I thought those last 7-8 weeks, and obviously it shows right there that they played elite defense. And a name that you didn't even bring up, Malachi Starks. It's going to allow Kyle Hamilton to free flow all around the defense. So, to me, I think you got them way too low on this list. I think they should be a top 3 team in the NFL. And I know you said talent-wise they are. And the biggest thing for them is getting to the Super Bowl and getting over the hump. That's the thing.
Got to win playoff games.
But the Bills haven't won a Super Bowl.
They won playoff games, though.
They ain't even been there.
They're winning playoff games.
So did the Ravens. They went to the AFC Championship 2 years ago.
Yeah, but they got to win. They got to win.
Yeah, 100%. But I think they should be a top 3.
Spot. Neither one can break through all the way.
Correct.
Through
it's hard to break through against the game manager, Patrick Mahomes.
That's what he was.
That's not what he
was.
Let's get to a team that darn near broke through the NFC in the first year of Jaden Daniels. The Washington Commanders, they're the last team in your chasing championship tier at number 8, Pete. Do you believe that Jaden is going to be even better this season?
I do. I think he's going to be better. I think he's going to be better throwing the football. We didn't see the best of him throwing the football last year. It was one of those situations where he would put his foot in the ground, go through the 1 read, get to the 2 read, and maybe get out of there. Now he's going to get to 3 and 4, and when he gets to 3 and 4, he's going to be that much better throwing the football. Their line will be better. They're bigger. They're stronger. Getting Tunsil, you move Coleman to left guard. They're bigger up front. Once Cosme gets back, then they're really going to be good up front. So I think offensively they're going to be good. I think the running game will be good enough. It's not going to be dynamic by any stretch of the imagination. are they good enough on defense? And that's the question. Who's going to rush the passer?
Yeah.
Do they have enough there to compensate for the fact that they're not a great individual pass rushing team? Can they scheme it up? I think that's the biggest issue.
And I think that's going to be on defensive coordinator Joe Wett. We saw Frankie Louvu last year, Pete. They rushed him a lot of times on the edge. Matter of fact, I believe he had 8.5 sacks, which was second on the team, only to Dante Fowler. So they'll schematically scheme things up. And they'll be able to do that because I think one of the glaring issues for this team last year, Pete, was the secondary, more specifically the cornerback position. Well, that actually might be the strength of their defense right now when you talk about all the guys that got coming back with Marshawn Lattimore. Mikey Sanders still slides into the slot where he's more comfortable. And Trey Amos, to me, will allow them to do so much thing. And let's not forget, the Super Bowl champion, Jonathan Jones. So they actually have subsequent depth at corner. They'll be able to play a little bit more man coverage, which will allow them to do some different things in regards to scheming up pressure and blitzing guys like Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner. So I think this is a team that is going to push the Eagles for the division. I still have the Eagles winning the division, but they'll be right there with them.
They need to get something out of Deebo Samuel. Because when you look at their team, McLaurin's going to get his, but they need Samuel to do a lot more.
Is this where the cutoff is? These are your 8 teams that can win a Super Bowl, and then after that, it's all wild cards?
I mean, in this league, somebody gets hot at the right time.
Facts.
Win. But yeah, these are the elite of the elite in my book.
Okay, up next, we are going to hit some of the teams that are loading potential playoff appearance, like the 49ers, who are looking to bounce back after a disastrous year filled with injuries. That's next when we hit Pete Prisco's Power Rankings. Back here on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight, looking at the odds to win the NFC West. The 49ers are the favorites at plus 145, and they are minus 220 to make the postseason after losing 11 games last year. We're going to hit Tier 3 of Pete Prisco's Power Rankings, where the Niners come in at number 9, atop that third tier, which is labeled playoffs loading. Why don't you have the Niners in that second tier where you're chasing a championship? Because we've had analysts on here have them winning the Super Bowl this season.
Well, I have them winning in the division, and a lot of people don't. I still think they're star loaded. I mean, you look at, and stars matter. I mean, is Purdy a star? I think people would say he is. He's paid like one. You left tackle, when he's in there, Trent Williams, he's a star. Kittle is definitely a star at tight end, one of the best tight ends in the league. You go to the other side of the ball. Okay, I forgot McCaffrey. He's healthy. There's a star. You go to the other side of the ball, you have Bosa, star, and Fred Warner's a star. So they're still loaded with stars, and everybody's just discounting that. I know depth could be an issue at times, but they're going to have to rely on young players. And young players at times, if you get them mixed with stars, that can be a good combination. The injuries at wide receiver are concerning. There's no question about that.
Pete, what does this say right here? Because you used the word. What does it say?
I can't read it.
Depth. That was their issue last year.
I can't read that chicken scratch.
You can read that, man. I'm not a doctor. Depth to me is an issue for this team because last year, that offensive line, when Trent Williams went down, it was bad. And we saw Dominic Pooney go down now. They're saying he's back and he was at practice. But they're one injury away from that offensive line being a disaster. Brock Purdy,
is everybody, by the way.
But no, they're more specifically than anybody. Brock Purdy was running for his life at times last year. So that's my biggest concern. And on the defensive side, you talked about it. They're expecting a lot from a lot of youthful players. More specifically at the defensive line, my guy Robert Saleh is back there. And that defense is controlled by the defensive line. And some of the body types they drafted usually aren't synonymous with how they want to play. Now, I know they wanted to stop the run. They made an emphasis on that, and that's why they drafted Alfred Collins and C.J. West. But who's going to be that guy opposite of Nick Bosa to affect the quarterback?
Mikael Williams.
But the thing is, to me, he's more of a big end, 3-4 edge guy that you can kick inside. And he's also talked about potentially kicking inside and rushing on third down. Now, they did bring in Bryce Huff, and he'll be a pass rush specialist for him. But I just think there's too many variables on the defensive side when you infuse in so much youth and you're expecting those guys to be guys from day one. Just going by history. Usually with Saleh, it takes about 2 years for him to get that defense to where he wants it to be. I think we'll see some early struggles from that defensive side. To your point, they have the offensive firepower. It seems like Jawan Jennings, who was going through a contract dispute, is back at practice. Ricky Pearsall. But the depth at receiver is a question. The depth at offensive line is a question. And then so much youth that they're depending on defense. I think this team is going to struggle this year.
The schedule's favorable. Really favorable.
But we don't know that. So, like, last year, we didn't think the Commanders were going to be a good team, right? And they made it all the way to the NFC Championship.
He had them as the second to worst team in the league going into
people always say they got the easiest strength of schedule. We won't know until they play the games.
Yeah. All right, let's round out the top 10 here with the Denver Broncos. Is this the best defense in football, Pete?
Yes. I don't think there's any doubt. Well, some people might say the Texans will push them for the best defense in the league. They're in the conversation for best defense in the league. Across the board, they get after it up front. They have pass rushers. They have the secondary. They can, adding Barron, the rookie in the secondary, really helps what they do back there. He can be a chess piece. He can move them all around. I love what they do on defense. And they're going to be, it's hard to move the football on them. Offensively, I think, the question is, there's a book now on Bo Nix. Usually you go through a season and then everybody kind of starts to get a kind of bearing on what you can and can't do. So how does he respond? How does Sean Payton respond? Do they run the ball well enough? Is the running game good enough? Because everything he does, he's really good off of play action and getting outside and booting them out and everything. So I think that's the question with the Broncos is, where does Bo Nix go? Does Bo Nix go way up or does Bo Nix stay where he was? And I think that's the biggest question.
I believe he goes way up, and this team wins the division for the first time in a decade.
Wow.
Pete, we know this championship-type defenses can get you to the Super Bowl. And when you look at Patrick Mahomes, the things that have ailed him is teams that can really get after the passer. We just saw the graphic of them being number one in the NFL in sacks. We saw them being a top 5 defense in regards to percentage, quarterback completion percentage allowed. They have no weaknesses on defense, but on offense, I think with Sean Payton and also Bo Nix, he takes that second-year leap, right? Cortland Sutton, they just gave him an extension. The run game, that was my question mark. They got two of more of the explosive backs in all of football. R.J. Harvey coming in, he's a guy that can take any carry, 60-plus yards, and J.K. Dobbins has the old chip on his shoulder after getting released or not re-signed by the Chargers. He's going to play them twice a year. Let's not forget, he had over 1,000 yards and didn't play the entire season last year.
So that's the playoffs loading there on the right. And right after the Broncos, you see a team the only team really that's gotten past Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the AFC in the last 6-7 years, and that's the Bengals. And we talk Broncos being maybe the best defense in football. The Bengals, can that defense be good enough to bridge the gap to get them where they need to go?
They weren't as bad as you would think they were last year. They were in the 20s.
Especially down the stretch. They played well down the stretch.
Last year. But the biggest difference for them will be the change in defensive coordinators. I think Al Golden is going to change the way they play. They were so simplistic on defense. They played a lot of zone, and they had man-to-man cover corners. And every one of those guys will be the first one to tell you they wanted to play more man. Well, they're going to play more man. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. I think getting Hendrickson back is big for that defense. They got to stop the run better. I think that's been a problem for them. The interior of that defense has been an issue. They're going to score a ton of points, and if you score a ton of points, it makes it a lot easier to play defense and be aggressive. They're going to come after the quarterback a lot more than they did under Lou Anarumo.
It'll be interesting because they scored a boatload of points last year, and we just saw the graphic right there in NFL history. They averaged 27.8 points in losses. So they scored almost 30 points in losses. That's ridiculous. And Pete, you hit it on the head. Can they stop the run? And what we've seen so far in the preseason, it doesn't bode well to that. Now, I know you'll say you can't believe what you see in preseason, but simple run fits, I can believe that. And that's what I saw on tape with their starters not being able to make simple run fits versus the Philadelphia Eagles backups, not even the starters. So they brought in T.J. Slayton. I was thinking he was going to be kind of like their DJ Reader and be able to slow the game down. But so far, it hasn't been good. I agree. Getting Trey Hendrickson will be massive because if you score a lot of points, hopefully you have a lead in the fourth quarter and he's one of the better closers. But I think it's buyer beware when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals just because I don't trust their defense.
Can't trust them in weeks 1 and 2 either. They've been terrible throughout Joe Burrow's career on opening weekend and in week 2. They'll try to snap a long losing skid this week against the Browns. Up next to the mid-tiers, where do the Steelers start with Aaron Rodgers, and will they be a playoff team? Going through Pete Prisco's power rankings, and we've reached the part of the show where my two favorite tiers back to back here. It's I don't know Jim, and it's the Jeff Fisher mid tier. If you're old enough to remember, Jeff Fisher always went like 7 and 9, 8.
You gotta say that I don't know, Jim.
Oh. It's happening, Pete. I don't know, Jim. Go ahead, play it, Jack. Jim.
See you, Tony.
So producer Jack was scouring the internet for an I don't know Jim soundbite. Apparently, it's like the Mandela effect. There are no soundbites out there where everyone remembers him saying it, but we can't find any evidence of him saying it. But this is the I don't know Jim. kind of the part of the power rankings here where we just don't know. And the Steelers are right there with Aaron Rodgers at 18.
We have no idea what he's going to be like, right? We don't. And here's the other thing about the Steelers. They didn't run the ball very well last year. And if they don't run the ball very well this year, it's going to be a problem for Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. It's not like he's got a bevy of weapons around him to throw the football to. So if they do not become the Steelers again and run the ball and play power football, they're going to have problems. Now, having said that, their offensive line, guys are a year older.
Correct.
So they should be better. Frazier's a year older at center. McCormick's a year older at right guard. Jones is stepping in at left tackle. So they're definitely older and more experienced up front. They should be more physical, which should help the run game, but they still have a lot of questions on this team.
Yeah, they're in the perfect category, and I don't know, Jim, because what Aaron Rodgers will we see? Will we see the guy we saw like the first 8 weeks of the season, or the guy we saw the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season? And then to Pete's point, who is he going to throw it to besides DK Metcalf? Who is their number 2 receiver? Will they have a consistent run game? Now on defense, they really don't have any weaknesses, but me and Pete have talked about this. They're a bit long in the tooth on defense. They're getting up there in age. They traded for Darius Big Play Slay and also Jalen Ramsey. But again, these are a lot of older players because they're all in this.
Watt.
All these guys are 30-plus years old. So will they potentially wear down as the season goes on is a big question mark for the Steelers.
They play in the early window on CBS this Sunday against the Jets. Also in that early window, it's the Cardinals at the Saints. And the Cardinals are number 20 in your power rankings, Pete. They've started off really good a couple of different times under Kyler Murray. How do they finish the season? How do they put it all together?
Well, he has to be consistent throughout the whole season. I think this is an enormous year for Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
I think he has to prove to people that he is their long-term guy. Like you said, he started well last year and then faded. And Kyler Murray can't fade down the stretch. He's got to continue to play well. Here's the other thing. They've added a bunch of bodies on the defense that was feisty and tough last year. They weren't great because they didn't have a lot of talent. They're going to be much better because you add those bodies up front. Sweat's there. You also get Calais Campbell. I mean, they add Tomlinson.
Yep.
They have bigger, stronger, and more physical up front, which will when Walter Nolan gets back healthy, their first-round pick. So I think that will matter as well. It's all about Kyler Murray. Let's be real. If they plays well, plays like he did early last season, they could be a playoff team. If he doesn't, they're going to have questions at quarterback.
You see it there at the bottom. It's Leger's pick to win the NFC.
It is, and to Pete's point, when you look at it, it's going to be the same scenario it was last year. Because the way the schedule's set up, they could start off really hot again. But it's the games in late November, December, January. And we saw it last year, the Minnesota Vikings game. 2 unwarranted interceptions. The Panthers game, you're throwing a ball away and you leave it in field to get intercepted and you end up losing that game and knocks you out of the playoffs. So to Pete's point, he can rewrite his history for the Arizona Cardinals and change the narrative about Kyler Murray, but 100% it's going to come down to him.
All right, let's move to the Jeff Fisher tier, the very mid tier. And really, mid doesn't mean average. It's like below average. And we've got the Carolina Panthers at 27, which I think is an improvement for them over where you had them most of the year last year, which was in the basement. But Bryce Young took a big step forward. How does he continue doing that?
He did. He played well down the stretch.
Yeah.
I think it was 11 touchdown passes and 4 picks in the final 7 games, I think, which is pretty impressive for him. I got to see him do it again. I got to see. Look, I've seen these guys get hot at the end of the year and then they fizzle out the next year. Or is it the pilot light going on and that's who he is? If that's who he is, they're going to be much better than this number 27. I have my reservations about it. I think they'll be good on the offensive line. Defensively, they have some issues as well. But I do think that if he plays like he did down the stretch, they could end up being like a team in the high 20s.
Yeah, this is a team, the next 2 teams we're going to talk about, actually, I think teams are going to hate to play and see them on the schedule. And it's because of how they revamped the trenches, right? When you look at their guard tandem, they might have the best guard tandem in football with Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. But also you got to remember what Bryce Young went through after getting benched and then coming back. And you talked about how he played significantly better because he trusted the offensive line. They actually have better weapons also at his disposal, 2-headed monster in the backfield. But I think the biggest improvement was the defensive line. They could not stop the run, right? Derek Brown, obviously being gone for the whole year, hurt them. But they refortified that defensive line. They're going to be way more bigger, way more physical. I think this is a teams, when they see them on the schedule, they're going to hate to play them.
Going to finish up Pete Prisco's power rankings on the other side of this quick timeout. And there's one team that's kind of like the undisputed number 1, Eagles. It's in a tier on its own. What are we going to call last place in Pete Prisco's power rankings? He's got a name for it next. All right, we're heading to the basement of Pete Prisco's preseason power rankings. You got teams that are down bad, and then it's just a dumpster fire in New Orleans, the Saints at the very bottom. Let's go, though, to the top of the down bad list, and it's the Vegas Raiders. Chris Hassel, Leger Douzable, and Pete Prisco are here. They're at such a disadvantage, even if they improve. Like they've got to play the Chiefs twice, the Chargers twice, and the Broncos twice. That's got to be as tough as anybody has schedule-wise.
They're going to be feisty, though, because Pete Carroll, that's what Pete Carroll does. That's who he is. And I think they're going to be able to run the ball with Gentry. The offensive line's pretty good. Geno will make some plays in the passing game. The two tight end, they'll use a lot of two tight end sets with Chip Kelly, which is surprising. You don't expect that from him, but he's going to. And Bowers is going to put up big numbers again. My concern with them is on the other side of the ball. Max Crosby is a game wrecker. But then you go up and down the entire group and you go, where is help? He doesn't have any help. He's almost a one-man band over there. And you look at their cornerback position is Eric Stokes, who the Packers have cornerback needs and they let him go. And Porter's going to end up,
Porter, a
rookie's going to end up playing. I mean, they have so many issues on the defensive side of the ball. Who else rushes the passer beside Max Crosby? And I think that's going to show up for them. So they're going to have to score a lot of points. They're going to give up a lot of points.
Yeah, they are going to be a feisty team, and you saw Geno's rankings right there when it comes to the Seahawks. To me, nobody throws more perfect passes than Geno Smith. And Dante Thorne's a name I want everybody to circle. He's the downfield threat guy. They really tried to get him involved early in preseason. I think he'll open the game up for Ashton Gentry. And we talked about Brock Bowers. We expect him to take another leap, which it's kind of strange to say because can he go any higher than what he did last year?
Numbers actually might come down.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was astronomical last year. But to your point, that's the biggest issue. That's why I never understood why they let go of both of their starting corners last year, right? They let Jack Jones, they released him. Obviously, there's some things off the field, but he's actually a good player. Jacorian Bennett was a head-scratcher for me because that's a young player who was cheap, that was a sending player. Now, they get Thomas Booker back, who's a good defensive tackle, which helped them stop the run. But to me, they have a glaring need at the corner position, and only time will tell, like, will they potentially get aggressive and try to trade for somebody, or will Darian Porter and those young corners actually step up?
All right, we saved the worst for last. It's Pete Prisco's last-ranked team in his power rankings. Why do you have the Saints at the bottom, Pete?
This is what cap hell does to you. And they've put the Bills out for years and years and years and years and years, and now it's catching up to them. And you look at this team, and age has become an issue.
So it's not really a clean slate for Kellen Moore, is that what you're saying?
No, he's stepping into a very tough situation. You don't have a quarterback. You don't have a lot of cap room. You don't have a lot of guys that are in their mid-20s who are dominant playmakers. It's a bad situation. And look, age has become an issue too at some spot. Demario Davis is one of their best players, and he's not a kid anymore. Cam Jordan's not a kid anymore. And I think that's become an issue for them. I think they'll be better on the offensive line than they've been in a long time. They're going to be much more physical up there. Kelvin Banks steps in at left tackle. You'll be more physical on that side of the ball. But do they have enough at defense A, and they get the quarterback make plays? I mean, it's all about the quarterback. And I don't know if their future quarterback is on this roster right now.
That's the issue, right? They had a quarterback competition with 3 guys, and they decided to go with the guy that started last year. But when you look at them, can their receivers stay healthy as well, too? Because that also helps in the development of a quarterback. Both of their receivers have really struggled to stay healthy. On the defensive side, I think they'll actually be pretty good. But to Pete's point, they are starting to get up there in age. When you talk about a guy like Demario Davis and Cam Jordan and the rest of the defense that they have, they brought over Reed from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's not young anymore either. So their defense will keep them in games early. I don't know if they have the firepower on offense. And then Trevor Penning, that experiment going to guard, we'll see how well that pays dividends because he really struggled at left tackle.
But they're going to be big up front.
They'll be massive up front.
That's a big guy up front. But
Kamara's getting up there, too.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
He keeps performing.
I like Kendra Miller, though. Sure. I think he'll be a nice 1-2 punch.
All right, Pete Prisco's power rankings can be found at cbssports.com if you want to go through all those. Those Saints are on CBS to start the football season in that early window at home against the Cardinals. That window highlighted by Aaron Rodgers facing the Jets, and then the late window and NFL Today live from Lambeau Field. NFL Today pregame, NFL Today plus pregame, and then the game at 4:25 Eastern.